Picture this, a damaged reel of film, its edges burned, its frames trembling with age. On it, a group of gaunt prisoners run, not away, but toward a line of black American soldiers. The soldiers freeze, rifles drop a few inches, their faces shift from combat readiness to something else entirely, confusion, disbelief, then resolve. The moment lasts seconds, the weight of it lasts generations. The reel clicks, and the scene dissolves into static. Its narrator's voice breaks through. Its frames trembling with age. This footage was never officially archived. A group of gaunt prisoners run, no one asked why, but toward a line of black American soldiers to military logs. The soldiers freeze, typed names, rifles slashed out in red pencil. Their faces reassigned from combat readiness rewritten to something else entirely. The paper trail feels confusion, disbelief. A historian's gloved hand, the moment to a page marked simply, the weight of it lasts generations. It's the only trace of a battalion that should have been recorded front and static. A narrator's voice breaks through. A survivor's testimony appears. This footage was an older man officially archived beneath soft light. For decades, his voice no one asked why, but certain. As the sound fades, supposed to be the ones who got to military logs. Typed names as if out in red not pencil. Just the moment, units but reassigned, that credits rewritten. Here, the paper trail feels deliberate. When armies move, a historian's gloved hand but sometimes flips to a page marked simply unconfirmed. Notes vanish. It's film the only trace of a battalion moments that as real as recorded and front and center slip into the margins again because a survivor's testimony belonged there. An older man sits beneath soft light. The truth behind the image is thin, but footage doesn't disappear by accident. Supposed to be the ones who don't rearrange themselves. He pauses, back to the reel, as if remembering to the soldiers the moment who stepped into a nightmare no briefing had prepared them for. Emotional beat. The camera shakes when armies move. History understood the significance, but sometimes not history gets edited. The frame freezes on a single soldier's face. Moments young, as real as bone and blood, the full weight into the margins, but because someone decided they belonged there. The tension. That's the how did a battalion, the government behind the images, end up being doesn't disappear by accident. Camps, no one believed don't rearrange themselves. And why was their presence erased? Back to the soldiers who stepped into a nightmare still ran on segregation. Prepared them for. Black battalions were labeled as if the person digging trenches, driving supply convoys, not guarding perimeters. The frame freezes on a single soldier's face, but never the ones that earned medals or carrying the full weight of what was clear, but cannot yet name. But not too close to the tension. Yet many of these soldiers, the government far beyond the roles they were given, end up being the first like the 761st Tank Battalion, drilled and for frontline combat with an intensity that matched any white division. The U.S. Army still ran on segregation. Close quarters battalions were labeled high-risk maneuvers, digging trenches, driving supply convoys, guarding perimeters. In practice, jobs that kept the war machine moving, but never the ones that earned medals or headlines, or outright refused to deploy them where it mattered. But not as the European front collapsed in early 40s soldiers trained hierarchy began to roles they were given, not out of units like the 761st Tank Battalion. German lines were breaking in unpredictable directions with an intensity that civilians fled in every direction. They mastered prisoner transports, vanished into quarters coordination, Allied intelligence maneuvers, scrambled to keep up with reports of ready for the most dangerous missions, never reached their destinations. They waited. The battlefield wasn't a map anymore. Commanders hesitated, it was a shifting maze, or outright refused to deploy them where it overlooked. As the European front collapsed in early 45, that hierarchy began to crack. Underestimated, out of fairness, underused, but desperation, and barely acknowledged in German official orders, found itself advancing faster than civilians fled in every direction. Roads cleared unexpectedly. Prisoner transports vanished into forests. Their position Allied intelligence closer to a cluster of coordinates of no one had fully marches that never reached their strategic objective. The battlefield wasn't a map anymore. It was simply called a shifting enemy stronghold. And in that chaos came the message, overlooked, redeployment order delivered with unusual urgency and no explanation. A black battalion, the route underestimated, the destination lacked a proper acknowledged in official orders. Officers reading the order exchanged uneasy than command expected because this wasn't a mission they had prepared for. Resistance it was a direction their position no one had properly closer to a cluster of coordinates. The question no one had fully briefed them there. It wasn't a strategic objective. A battalion that was never meant to lead the charge called suddenly standing at the front of it. Then came the message of brutal redeployment order delivered with no choice but to push these no explanation. Crews and infantrymen was into roles they'd been destination lacked and the moment they were tested, even the officers reading the order exchanged uneasy looks. They moved
because
with
this
speed and
wasn't a
discipline
mission
through
they had
half-abandoned
prepared for.
villages.
It was a
weaving
direction
around
no
broken
one had
artillery
properly
and
mapped,
smashed doorways,
which raises
German
the question,
stragglers tried
why
to
send
slow
them
them
there?
but the
And why
battalion
send them
broke
blind?
each pocket of
A
resistance
battalion that
with
was
sharp,
never meant to
coordinated
lead the
strikes.
charge,
Suddenly
officers
standing
who
at the
once
front of
questioned
it.
their readiness
After
now
weeks of
watched as the
brutal
unit
Allied
advanced
losses,
miles
commanders
beyond
had no
projected
choice
lines.
but to push
Then
these
came the
black tank
twist.
crews and
During a
infantrymen
brief
into
skirmish,
roles
they'd been
captured
denied.
a German soldier
And the
who
moment
muttered
they were
about
tested,
a processing
something
site ahead.
unexpected happened.
No one
They
recognized the term.
excelled.
They
Maps
moved
showed
with
nothing.
speed and
Intelligence summaries
through
mentioned
half-abandoned
nothing.
villages,
Yet the
weaving
way the
around
prisoners
broken
spoke,
artillery
hurried,
and smashed
afraid,
doorways,
made it
German
sound like something
stragglers
more
tried
than
to
a
slow
military
them,
position.
But
The battalion
broke each
halted.
pocket of resistance
Radios
with
buzzed.
sharp,
No
coordinated
orders
strikes.
came. Do they
Officers
stop
who
and
once
wait for
questioned their
clearance,
readiness
or push
now
towards
watched
something
as
their
the unit
superiors
advanced
didn't even
miles
know
beyond
existed?
projected
As they
lines.
pressed forward,
Then came the
another
twist.
challenge emerged.
During a brief
Their
skirmish,
momentum
they
outpaced
captured a German
headquarters.
soldier who
Terrain
muttered about a
turned
processing
unpredictable.
site ahead.
Fractured roads,
No one
downed
recognized
lines,
the term.
forests
Maps
too dense
showed
for clean
nothing.
formation.
Intelligence summaries
Communication
mentioned
with
nothing.
command lagged
Yet
minutes,
the way the
sometimes
prisoners
hours,
spoke, hurried,
and in that
afraid,
gap,
made
the
it
war
sound like
shifted
something
again.
more than a
Near
military
a set of
position.
rail tracks,
The battalion
was
halted.
hit by a
Radios
coordinated
buzzed.
ambush.
No orders
Mortars
came.
hammered the tree
Do they
line.
stop and wait
Machine
for
gun
clearance,
nests
or
forced the
push
tanks
towards
to
something
pivot
their
and fire
superiors
blindly?
didn't even know
Casualties
existed?
rose
As they
fast.
pressed forward,
Support units,
another
white
challenge
divisions
emerged.
assigned to hold
Their
the
momentum
flanks fell
outpaced
behind,
headquarters.
unable to keep
Terrain
pace.
turned
When the
unpredictable.
battalion
Fractured
finally
roads,
broke through,
downed lines,
scouts
forests
pushed past
too
the
dense
tracks
for clean
and
formation.
froze. Communication with
hidden
command
behind a
lagged
row of
minutes,
freight cars,
sometimes
they
hours.
found the truth
And
the
in that
maps
gap,
omitted.
the war
Train
shifted again.
wagons filled with
Near a set of
skeletal
rail
survivors,
tracks, the
some
battalion was
alive,
hit by a
many
coordinated
not.
ambush.
The stench,
Mortars
the
hammered
silence,
the tree line.
the hollow
Machine
eyes,
gun nests
none of
forced
it
the
matched
tanks to
any
pivot
known
and fire
military
blindly.
objective.
Casualties
This
rose
wasn't troop
fast.
movement.
Support
This
units,
was
white divisions
evacuation
assigned to
and
hold the flanks,
abandonment.
fell behind,
And if the trains
unable
were
to keep
leaving,
pace.
what when was the happening at the site finally they were broke heading through, toward, scouts the pushed answer past greeted the them in the tracks next and stretch of froze. forest. There,
The battalion
hidden behind a
advanced
row of
into a
freight cars,
secluded
they
compound
found
that
the
no
truth the
briefing
maps
had
omitted.
mentioned.
Train
Guard
wagons
towers
filled
empty,
with skeletal
gates
survivors,
open,
some
buildings
alive,
still smoldering.
many not.
What they
The
saw
stench,
next
the
rewired
silence,
their understanding
the
of the
hollow
war
eyes,
entirely.
None of it matched any
Bodies
known
stacked
military
in open
objective.
pits.
This
Prisoners
wasn't
crawling
troop
from
movement.
barracks.
This
Desperate
was
hands
evacuation
reaching for
and
help that came
abandonment.
too late
And
for
if the
thousands.
trains were leaving,
The soldiers
what was
didn't
happening
wait
at
for
the site
permission.
they were heading
They
toward.
broke locks.
The answer
tore down
greeted
doors,
them in the next
carried
stretch
the
of
starving
forest.
out on their backs.
The battalion advanced
Every
into a
step
secluded
exposed a new
compound
layer
that
of
no
horror.
briefing had
Evidence
mentioned.
of crimes
Guard
no one
towers
prepared them
empty.
to witness.
Gates open.
Then
the
buildings
radio
still
crackled.
smoldering.
A voice from
What
command.
they saw next
Hold
rewired
position.
their
Do
understanding
not
of the
enter
war
further.
entirely.
Too late.
Bodies
They
stacked in
already
open
had.
pits.
They
Prisoners
weren't just
crawling
out of
from
position.
barracks.
They
Desperate
were inside
hands
a
reaching
truth
for
the
help
army
that
wasn't
came
ready
too
to
late
acknowledge.
for thousands.
Delivered by the
The
very
soldiers
battalion
didn't wait
it
for
had
permission.
tried to sideline.
They broke locks,
and now
tore down
the real
doors,
question hung in
carried
the
the
air.
starving out
What
on their
happens
backs
when soldiers
Every
witness a
step
reality they
exposed
were
a new
never
layer
meant
of
to
horror.
document? Evidence
Imagine
of crimes
crossing
no
a
one
point of
prepared
no
them
return,
to witness, and realizing
Then
the
the
only
radio
thing left to
crackled.
do
A
is
voice from
finish what you
command.
started. Hold position.
The battalion
Do
ignores the
not enter
hesitation in
further.
headquarters
Too
voice
late,
and
they
pushes
already
deeper into
had.
the compound.
They weren't
They
just
moved
out
fast,
of position,
not out of
they
fear,
were
but
inside
necessity.
a truth the army
Prisoners
wasn't ready
collapsed
to
into their
acknowledge.
arms.
Delivered by
Medics
the very
improvised with
battalion
whatever
it
they
had
had.
tried to
Canteens,
sideline.
torn
And
uniforms,
now, the
spare
real question
rations.
hung in the air.
Soldiers
What
who spent
happens when
months fighting
soldiers witness
tanks
a reality
now
they
lift
were
the
dying
dying
meant
over
to
barbed
document
wire and carry them to
Imagine
safety?
crossing a point of
The
no
cameras
return
come out too,
and realizing
a
the
few
only
signal
thing
corps
left to do
photographers
is
attached to the
finish
unit
what you started.
start filming
The
everything.
battalion ignores
the
the
barracks,
hesitation
the
in
children,
headquarters
the
voice,
mass
and
graves
pushes
still
deeper
open.
into the compound.
They know history
They
needs
move
proof,
fast,
and
not
they
out
know
of
fear
fear
but
doesn't
necessity.
wait for authorization.
Prisoners collapse
The
into their
footage is
arms.
shaky.
Urgent.
Medics improvise
Shot by
with
men
whatever
who
they have.
understand they are
Canteens,
capturing
torn
something the
uniforms,
world will spare
struggle to
rations.
believe. Soldiers
Word
who've spent
spreads
months
inside the
fighting
camp.
tanks,
Survivors
now lift
gather
the dying
around
over
the black
barbed
soldiers
wire
and
touching
carry
carry
their
them to
sleeves,
safety.
repeating the same
cameras
line.
come out too.
You were the
A
first.
few Signal Corps
You were the
photographers
first
attached
Americans
to the unit
who came.
start filming
It said with
everything.
disbelief,
the barracks,
gratitude,
the children,
and
the
something
mass
deeper,
graves still
a
open.
recognition that
They
the
know
men who
history
saved
needs
them
proof,
had fought their
and they
own
know
battles
proof
long
doesn't wait
before
for
arriving at the
authorization.
camp. The
For a
footage is
brief
shaky,
moment,
urgent.
it seems like the
shot by
battalion
men
has
who
carved its
understand
place
they are
into the
capturing
story of
something
liberation.
the world will struggle
But then,
to believe.
the war machinery
Word spreads
resets.
inside the camp.
Within days,
survivors
typed
gather
reports
around the black
circulate
soldiers,
through command
touching their
posts.
sleeves,
The timeline
repeating the
shifts.
same line.
Credit moves
You
to
were the
nearby
first.
white divisions.
You were the first
Units that
Americans
arrived
who
hours,
came, or even
it
a day
said with
later.
disbelief.
The documents
Gratitude
list them
as the primary liberators. A recognition that the men who shrinks to a footnote fought their own battles long before arriving at the camp. Photographs taken on site collected. It seems like the battalion has carved its place into the story of liberation. Into restricted archives. But then, the others are filed under vague labels. Within days, unverified, unidentified location. The damage reel, the one that survives to nearby white divisions so thoroughly, units may as well have been hidden on purpose. Or even a day later. A veteran from the battalion would later summarize it in primary liberators. Spoken almost as an afterthought. To a footnote. We freed them. Disappears entirely. We disappeared. The photographs taken on site are collected, boxed, and this one raises a question no official into restricted archives. Why others are filed under vague labels? Who decided their story didn't belong in the history unidentified location? After the damaged reel, the battalion one that survived is misfiled so acknowledgement. It may as well have been hidden on purpose. They walked straight back into the veteran from the battalion would later summarize it in 6 words. Segregated housing, almost as an segregated futures. We freed them. Most received no medals beyond the standard service ribbons, but disappearances leave traces. No mention of a concentration camp. They risked everything to liberate. Why were the histories are written quickly in the post-war rush story didn't belong in the history they helped write. Those books describe the camps, after the war, the chaos, the battalion the first Americans to arrive, expecting at least these Americans. Instead, they walked straight back into the country they left behind. Remain boxed away. Segregated streets, liberation, segregated housing, told segregated the men who first witnessed it. Most received no medals beyond the standard service their own accounts. No public ceremonies. Black soldiers were the ones who opened the concentration camp. They carried them out. Everything to liberate. Water when their bodies official histories are written quickly in the post-war rush to make sense of victory. Historians call them confused memory, chaos, a byproduct Americans of trauma to arrive, but not the these Americans. Their version contradicts the official record is enough to dismiss their photographs remain boxed away. Decades later, liberation becomes a story told. Historians, the men who first witnessed it. Army signal meanwhile, survivors give their own accounts. Some insist that black soldiers were the ones who opened the gates, frames of prisoners running toward gave them water when their bodies could barely swallow. Physical evidence of a moment are buried under bureaucracy. Historians call them confused memory, everything, a byproduct of trauma or time. Museums reevaluate timelines. Contradicts the official record revisit testimonies once ignored. Then the battalion finally enters the conversation room, though most of the men who lived the moment are Army Signal Corps recognition arriving long after their voices faded. He finds the damaged story now sits at an uneasy crossroads. Prisoners running memory, black soldiers, and the cost of undeniable. Physical evidence of a moment buried under bureaucracy. Can the truth still matter when the people who lived it are no longer here to claim it? Museums reevaluate timelines.
Opening a museum
Scholars revisit testimonies once
an
ignored.
Entire chapter
the battalion
of history
finally
is missing.
Enters the conversation.
Today, that
though
silence
most of the men who lived the moment are gone.
Military
their
scholars,
arriving long
archivists,
after
and
their
Holocaust
voices
researchers
the
sift
story
through
now
forgotten
sits at an
reels
uneasy
and
crossroads
reports,
between
piecing
memory,
together the role of
evidence,
segregated
and the cost
units
of delay.
that were pushed out of
and
the
it leaves
spotlight.
a final question
What was
hanging.
once dismissed
Can
as
the
rumor
truth still
is now
matter
backed
when
by
the people who
testimony,
lived it
images,
are no longer
and
here to
re-examined
claim it?
timelines. Holocaust
Imagine
museums
opening a
update their
museum
displays
exhibit
and
lectures
realizing an
rewrite old
entire
assumptions.
chapter of history is missing. Once relegated
Today,
to the margins,
that
begin
silence
to
is
surface.
finally being
Slowly,
challenged.
carefully,
Military
but
scholars,
unmistakably. Archivists,
the
and
battalions
Holocaust
that liberated
researchers
camps
sift through
carried
forgotten
survivors
reels
and
and
documented
misfiled
atrocities,
piecing
no
together the
longer
role of
ghosts in the
segregated
archives.
units that were
It
pushed
doesn't
out of the
fix
spotlight.
the years of absence.
What was
It
once
doesn't
dismissed
return
as
the
rumor
recognition
is now
stolen
backed
while the
by
soldiers were
testimony,
still alive.
images, and
But it does
re-examined
something
timelines.
essential.
Holocaust museums
story
update
where it
their
always
displays.
belonged.
Lectures
On record,
rewrite
in
old
public,
assumptions.
beyond
Names
erasure.
once relegated
And in
to
the
the
end,
margins,
a
begin
single
to
line
surface.
holds the weight
Slowly,
of everything
carefully,
uncovered.
but unmistakably.
History remembers
the
what it is
battalions
shown
that liberated
until someone
camps
dares
carried
to show what was hidden.
and documented atrocities are no longer ghosts in the archives. It doesn't fix the years of absence. It doesn't return the recognition stolen while the soldiers were still alive. But it does something essential. It puts their story where it always belonged, on record, in public, beyond erasure. And in the end, a single line holds the weight of everything uncovered. History remembers what it is shown until someone dares to show what was hidden.